Thanks for checking out the Superdog comic blog. My name's Kev, and today we're going to try and untangle Dark Days the Forge #1 from DC Comics, written by Scott Snyder and James Tynion IV, with art by Jim Lee, Andy Kubert, and John Romita Jr. This is the first of a two-part prologue leading into the Dark Knights Metal event, and centers on 3 stories featuring Hawkman, Batman, and Green Lantern, among others. I'm going to quickly summarize all 3 parts and then put on my finest tinfoil hat to theorize what the Dark Days and Nights might mean for the DCU going forward. Here's the timestamp if you want to just skip to the analysis. I'm also going to be talking spoilers, revelations, and major plot points from the issue, so make sure you pick this one up before the next chapter, Dark Days the Casting, comes out on July 12th. We begin the issue with Carter Hall, aka Hawkman, recounting his Golden Age origin story of how he was once an Egyptian prince who had discovered a crashed alien ship made of a strange compound known as nth metal. The metal granted him and his bride the powers of flight and strength, as well as casting them into an endless cycle of reincarnation. As an archaeologist in his current life, Carter has set off on a path to discover the cause behind nth metal's control over life and death itself. After years of studying the metal's properties in isolation, Carter has come to understand that it conducts immense energy from somewhere beyond his comprehension, somewhere dark and horrifying. He's only a small part in a massive story that spans back to the dawn of man, back to the first 4 tribes that ever formed, one of which was known as the Tribe of the Bat. We cut over to Batman, who mounts a rescue of a scientist from a secret Wayne Tech facility just as it's being engulfed in lava. In a recording, the frantic scientist mentions that there's something wrong with the metal in the Earth's core before Batman busts into the room in a mech suit. He and the scientist get clear of the eruption, but land deep in the ocean and risk being crushed by the immense pressure. Aquaman shows up and aids in the rescue, but confronts Batman about why he had kept the facility a secret from him. What did he hope to find so far into Atlantean territory? Bruce fires back, saying he shouldn't even ask him that, considering what he knows is lying beneath Atlantis. We as the reader can only assume what he means, but my guess is that it's somehow related to Atlantis' mystical history that we've seen in other Rebirth titles such as Aquaman and Blue Beetle. Batman heads up to his lunar base and encounters super genius Mr. Terrific, having returned from a secret mission on a parallel Earth at Batman's request. Mr. Terrific mentions how both Earths have been emitting a strange frequency and how it would take something practically cosmic in scale to process all of his data. Batman leads Mr. Terrific to a fortified container and punches in a passcode. He mentions how he'd extracted molecules from someone who he had deemed too dangerous to let roam around the DCU, which, coming from Batman, you know that means something. The doors open, revealing the egg-shaped form of none other than Plastic Man, whose origins had been set up in the 2013 event Forever Evil, but we hadn't really seen or heard from since. Batman's last stop of the issue takes him beneath the Fortress of Solitude, where unbeknownst to everyone but his buddy Superman, he has a secret storeroom kept. The room is secured with an impossible lock and a key that Batman had shot into the sun for good measure, which is probably why Batman called up master escape artist and new god Mr. Miracle. Mr. Miracle obliterates the lock, but emerges visibly upset with Batman by what he finds inside. He warns Batman that he needs to turn back from whatever it is he's planning right now, but Batman just casually dismisses him, pretending that he's Alfred. He enters the room and stands before a horned monolith crackling with energy, a multiversal tuning fork whose presence inevitably spells crisis. On the living planet of Mogo, current headquarters of the Green and Yellow Lanterns, Hal Jordan and his boss Ganthet meet in secret. Ganthet tells him of whisperings that a great and horrible truth is on the verge of coming to light on Earth, and that it was up to the two of them to covertly put a stop to it. Hal is then tasked with investigating a set of coordinates pointing directly to Wayne Manor. Hal is pretty uneasy about having to break into the Batcave, but obeys his orders nonetheless. He enters the heart of the cave, but is kicked square in the jaw by Duke Thomas, Batman's latest protege. He quickly apprehends Duke and finds the hidden entrance behind a false wall as Duke scrambles after him. The hallway they find is pitch black, but a distant voice curls out from the darkness, beckoning them deeper down. Hal's power ring begins to short out and burn his hand, something he's never seen it do before. As Duke and Hal walk past trophy cases and hologram projectors, the voice suggests a connection between different mystical items such as Dr. Fate's helmet, Aquaman's trident, and Wonder Woman's gauntlets, and the Dionysium and Electrum compounds used by the Court of Owls in Scott Snyder's Batman run. Duke and Hal are also told that Batman had at one point formed a Black Ops team called the Outsiders, although on what kind of missions they were sent on is still to be known. The two reach an immense steel door as the voice beckons them onward, sounding more and more warped as they get closer. Hal pries it open, and beyond the door stands the Joker, one of 3 we know is out there. Batman has had him locked away since the events of Endgame, and he appears to know much more about the mystery behind the metal than anyone else. Alright, Wow, this issue was dense. We saw the return of a few longtime favorite characters. I'm personally excited to see what Plastic Man does since that guy is almost indestructible, a ton of callbacks to pre-Flashpoint continuity, and a bit of a glimpse at the Dark Matter imprint that's going to be spinning out of Dark Knight's metal. That part was in a short scene with the Immortal Men about halfway through the issue. I left it out to keep the video more condensed since it wasn't really that important. Right from the start, we see that Hawkman has gotten his Justice Society origins back, but what's really bizarre about that to me is that the alien, Thanagarian space cop version of Hawkman recently died in the Death of Hawkman miniseries. Okay, sure, Hawkman has reincarnation, maybe there's something kind of weird going on with the Nth metal, but then at the end of the recent Captain Atom miniseries, we see a version of Hawkman who was apparently on the Justice League. As far as I know, Hawkman was never a member of the Justice League prior in either the New 52 or recently in Rebirth, so I'm wondering what Hawkman's involvement could mean as far as what the post-Superman Reborn timeline is. I've been wanting to know what's in canon, what's out of canon, ever since Superman Reborn. That'll probably get cleared up in DC Rebirth itself, and not Dark Knight's metal, as far as I know. That's all going to be Jeff Johns. This is Scott Snyder kind of having a fun time with the multiverse, as far as I understand. Hawkman also tells us that one of the first 4 human tribes had a bat for a mascot. And this is definitely a reference to Grant Morrison's miniseries The Return of Bruce Wayne, which spun out of Final Crisis, in that Bruce Wayne was sent back in time through Darkseid's weird Omega stuff, but basically in that he fought off Vandal Savage and established Batman as like this primal myth. So it's weird that between this and the multiversal tuning fork that Batman has under the Fortress of Solitude, it looks like all 3 crises are back in continuity. We also have the link between the metals that the Court of Owls used and the different magical artifacts from different magic-using cultures throughout the DCU, so hopefully this means we'll get a bit more narrative connective tissue between the 52 Earths and the metaphysical realms that we saw in the Multiversity map. And finally, I just want to speculate about what the Dark Multiverse could actually be other than what the name suggests. According to an interview with Newsarama, Snyder had mentioned that the Dark Multiverse would be something like an ocean of possibility upon which the multiverse floats, and that the core of Dark Knight's metal is about honoring the spirit of exploration that DC's been sorely lacking lately. However, in DC's September solicitations, we know for sure that we'll be getting a bunch of these one-shots introducing new, dark, edgy versions of Batman from the Dark Multiverse. It seems to clash with the point of Rebirth, that is to say, returning levity and legacy to these characters. But I trust Snyder when it comes to balancing the tone that Rebirth has set up so far with the risks he wants to take in metal. But what I really am hoping to see is Snyder and his team using the Dark Multiverse as a way to build upon the trippy, meta, and downright Lovecraftian elements of the DC lore that writers such as Grant Morrison and Jeff Johns have weaved into it over the years. Check out Animal Man, Infinite Crisis, and Multiversity for some great examples of what I'm talking about. Granted, the concept of a fictional character acknowledging what they are is nothing new. Hell, Deadpool does it all the time. But when you look at characters like Animal Man who went as far as having a conversation with his own writer, then suddenly all of these terrifying existential questions start to crop up. How would you be able to live your life knowing that everything you've ever cared about, everything you've ever known, hinged on editorial decisions? And once you could see the true order of reality, could you transcend it? I'll probably make a video in the future discussing how Morrison and other writers manipulate the fourth wall, but for now, I think that's a great place to end the video. Thanks again for tuning into the Superdog Comic Blog, and next time, I'll be covering the second part of the story in Dark Days the Casting. I'll see you then.